Have you ever wondered what life would be like if you grew up in a different culture? For me personally, I've always wondered what my life would be like if I grew up a part of a Native American culture, such as the Chinook Native American tribe of the Pacific Northwest. The Chinook tribe has been around for many, many years before European settlers such as Lewis and Clark came around to discover them. I educated myself on the Chinook Native American tribe by watching documentaries, reading articles, and reading more articles from websites. I can't wait to share with you guys how the Chinook tribe was established, some of their traditions, and the ways that they hunt and gather food. According to an article from Public History PDX, I learned that the Chinook tribe existed a long, long time ago, but they weren't first discovered until Lewis and Clark found them in 1805. According to an article I read from OPB, I learned that there are 5 in the Chinook-speaking nation, one of which being the Clatsop tribe. The people of the Chinook tribe lived in the Northwest along the banks of the Columbia River and the coast of the Pacific Ocean. They weren't exposed to settlers for many, many years, but when they were extremely peaceful, and their main priority was to help them. Unfortunately, the Chinook did not gain federal recognition until 2001 when President Clinton became president. To add on to what I previously said about when settlers started coming and they were discovering the Chinook tribe, the Chinook taught them how to hunt and gather food the way that they knew how, and they also mainly just shared with them their knowledge about the ways that they cooked food, the ways that they preserved the land, and this was super important when Europeans came to the Americas. While the Indians of the Chinook inhabited the lands of the Pacific Northwest, they developed many traditions and ways of life. One thing that was super unique to the Chinook was the symbols and the things that they used to show what their tribe looked like. One of the main symbols that we see often is the fish symbol that I have on my slides here. Often the men in the tribes reflected this sort of style with also what they put on their bodies, such as tattoos and the things that they wore. When Europeans started coming around to the Chinook tribes, you can see over time that their style starts to get, I don't know how to describe it, less intense would probably be the way. They sort of started to develop looking more European and less over the top with like the feathers and all the things they used to wear. However, they do still show these kind of symbols and wear these colors, and they're still very true to their unique style. Today, you can go look on the Chinook Nation website and see how these symbols are still true for them today. They still use all these symbols and colors, and it's super fascinating, honestly, the way that they carry on their culture and legacy through these small details in their lives. Another significant part of the culture that goes hand in hand with these symbols that I cannot forget to include is the clothing that they wore. It was super unique, and the men and women often are wearing lots of jewelry, lots of feathers, lots of color, mostly red and black, and you'll also see teal at times. Their culture is expressed in a very unique way, and they incorporate it into every area of their life. Not only do we see their style in their clothing and in their symbols, but they used many decorations and just life necessities that incorporated this style that was just beautiful. In these slides, I have pictures of totem poles and baskets and things that were woven that the women made, and you can see how their style is incorporated into every aspect of their life. More often than not, it was the women who were taught at a very young age how to weave baskets, how to make art, how to make blankets and jewelry and all these sorts of things that they used in their everyday lives. But yeah, it was mostly the women that did those things, and that leads us into traditionally what men used to do, which is men traditionally would hunt and gather food. They took hunting very seriously as it was a main priority to show respect to the land that they were given, and they did this in many ways. They did this by preserving the food, preserving the meat, They used every single part of the animal. They didn't leave any part out, and they always made sure to make use of everything that they hunted and killed, which I think is super important when talking about the integrity of the Chinook tribe. These pictures you can see, and I wanted to mention that they mostly hunted in the water because they were so close to it. They were very close to the ocean and the rivers, and they mostly hunted fish, and they also hunted on land, but yeah, mostly in the water. And then when it came time to cook, the women of the Chinook, like I think I said before, they often would cook and make the blankets and all those sorts of things, but they were taught these skills at a very young age. The women were very skilled, and I think a misconception about the women is that they weren't held to the same standard as the men were, but I actually think that the men were strong and they hunted, but the women were also strong and they did a lot of the hard labor that often goes unnoticed. They spent a lot of time actually doing hard labor and making things that everyone in the tribe needed, and I think this is something about the Chinook that's amazing that goes overlooked. Lastly, a lot of the stuff that the women made for the Chinook tribe, they traded. They were notorious for trading, and I thought that was a really cool fact to include, that they really wanted to help other people and they were curious about learning what other people were like, especially after the Europeans came. I think one thing that I really want to push is that the Chinook Indians are unified and they have overcome so much adversity and hardship since settlers came to the Americas. They've endured so much, and we owe them respect for all that they taught us and all the different ways that they helped the Europeans when they came to settle. Thank you so much for listening to my informative speech on the Chinook Native American tribe of the Pacific Northwest.